Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Colleen and I like to share traditional cooking methods, cooking and canning, and just kitchen stuff you may be interested in. And today I am getting ready to, we have a long lead up to the holiday season, but the time can go by so quickly. I realize that we're just in the last week of October and it's still a ways off, but it will come on us quickly. So today I'm going to make a large batch of antipasto. And the reason that I'm going to make it so large is because we also use it for gift giving and hostess gifts. So I always try each year to make a large batch. Some years we have some carryover and we just use it up through the year. Anytime that there's a need for a little something, just get out a package of crackers and some antipasto and you're set to go. So this recipe can be cut in half or quartered even. I'm not sure how you would figure out how to do the quartering part, but you can definitely make it in a smaller batch. It's just today I am going to go big. So I'm going to get the first of the ingredients here. There's quite a bit of chopping to do in this recipe. If you had a friend or a family member close by that could give you a hand with this, that would be perfect. And then you could split the jars because it makes between 14 and 18 jars, somewhere in there. Depends on things like how big your vegetables are, because I guess you could do it by the pound, but I do it by the piece, so it depends on how big your vegetables are and so forth. So there's that variable in there, but it makes a lot of jars anyway. So come on back. Right after this, I'll have all of the things we need to get started. Okay, I think I'm ready to get started on this. So the first thing we need is a head of cauliflower, and some people like more cauliflower in theirs, but I'm not the biggest fan of cauliflower, and I don't like a lot of it in there, but that is entirely up to you. I'm going to use this entire head, but I'm going to cut these pieces down to be very small because we want to be able to get a little bit of everything in a bite. And if any of these things are too big, then we can't. Now over here I have a pot, my large canner pot, which is going to serve two purposes today. It's going to cook and it's also going to can. So I am just going to continue to drop these bits of cauliflower into the big pot, and then when I'm ready to bring you back for the rest, we'll move on to that. Now, I've got all the cauliflower chopped, and I'm going to chop up 2 green peppers. These are pretty large, so I think maybe I'll only go to 1. But you could add more. That's if you really like a lot of pepper in your antipasto. If you don't know if you do, then I would start off with just 1 really large one like this. Look at these things, they're almost as big as my head. I'm just going to do 1, but I am going to make it quite fine, and I'm going to do the same with an orange pepper. Now, I didn't want to run off to the store. The recipe that I should tell you a little about the recipe, I guess. The recipe that I'm using today came from my stepmother. Her name was Helen. I love this recipe. She gave it to me many years ago, and I think she got it from her friend Ardeen. So everything's going in this big pot, and because it's all going to cook down for just a few minutes though. We won't be cooking it for a very long time, and so it goes pretty quickly. It's just, this is the worst part, is getting everything chopped. I was just thinking to myself as I was chopping all that cauliflower, I'll bet you could use cauliflower rice and in its place, which would speed it up, because chopping the cauliflower is probably the hardest part of the whole thing, or the most time consuming. It's not like it's difficult. And I've had this recipe for a really long time. I'm going to say 30 years. And we've been making it, I'm not going to say every year, because there were years we didn't make it because the recipe is so large. If you're not giving it away, it can definitely last you from one season to the next and then beyond. So most seasons, most of the time, there's at least a jar of homemade antipasto. I've never purchased a jar of store-bought antipasto, because after you've had homemade, yeah, you won't go back probably, unless you're the kind of person that lives alone and you don't have people to share not only the work with you, but also the end product. Then I might be convinced to buy it. But otherwise, the flavor is just so much better when you are making it yourself. So that's the last of the peppers. Oh, somebody remarked the other day that I talk altogether too much on my videos. Not sure what to say about that. Maybe you're on the wrong channel then. 'Cause I'm a bit of a chatter. Anyway, now in my strainer here I have a jar of pickled onions, and I have a jar of, let me just go through them, a jar of pickled onions, a jar of dill pickles, a can of right sliced black olives, and a jar of stuffed olives. I couldn't get them sliced when I went to the grocery store, so I got them whole, but these are really tiny. I still think I'm going to have to cut them in half, but that's things that I have to open and drain. So I'm going to open them and I'm going to drain them into this strainer, because at the end of all this, I may need to have a little more juice. You're never quite sure how much juice you're going to have. So I'm going to hold back the pickle juice. Maybe I'm not going to get into the jars. I think most of these onions are pretty good, but I am going to take some of them. I'm going to take some of them and just go through them with my knife. Block your vision here. So that they're not all big. You could use raw onions in this as well, and that would be also good. I think if you were going to use raw onions, you would probably, well, you need the equivalent of 2 cups approximately, I would say. Now here come the little olives, and I am just going to dump these into there too. And do the same thing. I'm just going to take some of them out. And cut through them. Because we definitely don't need all those whole olives in there. We're trying to get things onto a spoon or a fork so that we can get it on a biscuit. And it's always nice to get all the flavors at once. Pull out a few more sneaky guys that got away from me. So there will be a few whole olives, but I have sliced most of them in half. You're probably going to give me trouble about my knife skills there. It's probably not the safest way to do it, but oops. I'm just going to wipe my hands and grab my can opener. That happens once in a while with these tin cans of sliced ripe olives. And these ones, I'm going to drain most of this off in the sink. There we go. It makes a lot of garbage, this recipe. And last but certainly not least, let's hope I can get this jar open. I am going to be spending some time cutting up these dills. So I'm going to drain some of that into the colander, and then I'm going to drain some into the sink, because I know I won't need it all. And I'm going to chop away. So it will take me some time to do this, and I won't make you sit through that whole thing. I will speed past this. Now this recipe is quite forgiving. You could add carrots to this recipe. You could add celery to it. I'm using fish in this recipe. You could leave that out. You can just make it all with vegetables if you like. So there's lots of different ways to make this recipe work for yourself. I'm adding 4 cans of green beans that were cut. And again, I ran my scissors through these cans because they're beautiful for presentation, but they don't fit well on a spoon with the other ingredients. So I probably cut 30% of them. So now I've got my fish, but I'm not going to add the fish to this right away. I am going to put this on the stove, and I am going to bring it to a boil, and I'm going to boil it 10 minutes. And then I am going to add the fish and boil it for another 10 minutes. I'm going to go back and put in the rest of this bottle of ketchup, because I'm looking in here and it's looking kind of scant. But I have to remember that once everything heats up, that there will be more juice. So use the rest of this bottle. It was 1.5 liters. I'm not sure how many that is in ounces, but we could figure it out. I'm going to stir it, and then I'm going to taste it for acidity. Just to see if I need to add back some of the pickle juice. No, I don't. I think it's fantastic. So I'll get this on the stove and I'll boil it. And then when it's boiling and ready for the next ingredients, I'll bring you back and show you the fishes that I put into the dish. Now I'm not sure, but I believe you can probably hear that pot bubbling away in the background. I've got it set on medium, and it's been bubbling now for 10 minutes, and I mean really bubbling. Make sure you're stirring it frequently because it will tend to stick to the bottom. And I wanted to remind you right now that all my recipes are found in the description box below the video. So just follow the little arrow on the corner of little down B and go down there, or go to more, and you will find the recipe or the link to the recipe if it's not mine. So now I've got all the vegetables in that pot bubbling away, and I'm going to start adding the fish. I've got 2 cans of cocktail shrimp. I add them now because I don't want them to break up. I have 4 cans of tuna, and this is tuna in water. And I have 4 tins of anchovies. Now I promise you, you won't know the anchovies are there. They just give you this little something in the background. They melt away. But if you are frightened about them, then please just leave them out. It will make a difference, but if you haven't tasted it with them in before, you won't know what the difference is. So if it scares you, leave it out. And I will put this all into the pot, and then I'm going to let the pot boil again for another 10 minutes. And then we're done. It'll go into the jars. So I'll bring you back for that process. So it's just about time. I'm seconds away from taking the hot antipasto off the stove. And I thought this would be a good time to let you know that, well, you've probably seen them sitting earlier. I've washed and rinsed all my jars. There we go. Now this is really hot. I'm going to be super cautious, but I thought this would be a good time to just go over a little bit of information about canning. I'm water bath canning today, and I have gone over all my jars to check to make sure there are no cracks in the jars and no nicks in the rims. It can happen. It doesn't happen to us much because we're really super cautious with our jars, but it can happen. And if you had a nick out of here, then it wouldn't make a seal and your food would go bad. So it only takes a moment to inspect your jars and make sure that they're good. Today, as always for the last couple of years, I'm using 4 jars canning lids, and I have had 100% success with them. I find that the metal is a little thicker. I'm not sure what's happened to our old reliable lid companies in the past few years, but they're not as reliable as they once were. So 4 Jars reached out to me a couple of years ago, and I partnered with them, and I'm so happy that I did. These jars are BPA free. They have a silicone seal rather than a rubber seal, and it just seems to work better. I wouldn't recommend boiling the lids, although I heat mine. The company says to wash the lids in hot soapy water and to rinse them and let them sit aside. I always heat my lids. I don't know whether that makes a difference or not, but these lids come in smaller size, so you can buy them by 50s or 100s. You can buy them in bigger lots. I think you can buy 1,000. Anyway, I will leave a link in the description box below this video so that you can follow my link. If you follow my link to 4 Jars, you'll get 10% off your orders when you're ordering through that link. That affiliate link gives me a little bit. It's not much, but every little bit counts, and I think that you'll really be pleased with this product. There will be a link for my friends in the US and also my fellow Canadians to accompany to the 4 Jars company in Canada. So we have rings now. I inspect my rings. Some of my rings, it used to be that rings would last you for a lifetime, and now I notice that the rings get rusty really quickly. It's almost like you have to dry every ring when you're finished with it because they do get rusty. So inspect your lids or your rings, because if they do get rusty inside, when you put them on and you tighten them to finger tight, the rust could be inhibiting you turning them on there, and you may not get them on as tight as you think you are. So you can just use a little SOS pad to clean out the rust if you need to use that lid, if you don't have, or ring if you don't have one to replace it. So things that I'm using today, I'm going to use my ladle, I'm going to use my funnel, and I'm going to use my jar lifter. And because I've used my canner in order to cook this, I am going to have to fill all my jars and then wash my big pot and put it back on the stove and get the water into the pot so that I can use it for canning as well. So I'm not going to dilly-dally around with this process too much because there's still quite a bit to do. So I am going to stir this mixture, and I'm going to stir it frequently to make sure that the sauce is not separating from the rest of the food. And I'm going to fill these jars to within the 1 inch mark. Now you can tell you're at 1 inch if you are up to the bottom ring of the jar right here, like on the neck of the jar. That's 1 inch. I feel like I might have a little too much on this jar. First jar. Let's see, I'm going to press it down And with the funnel in place, I'm still going to take a little bit out. There we go. And I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to use a skewer. You could get a fancy debubbler. You can use a kitchen knife and just go around the jar, especially because it's pretty dense, and make sure that there are no air bubbles escaping you. And then move on to the next jar. Just as I said, I just have them sitting there hot. And check the top and make sure there's nothing on it. And then on goes the lid, make sure that it's in place. Add the ring. Finger tight, set it aside, and move on to the next jar. And I'm going to repeat that process until I have them all done. Well, that's the last of it going in the jars. I got 14 jars, 14 pints. So I'm really happy with that. As I said before, if you added more vegetables to it, more cauliflower, you could add carrots, and yeah, there's no end to what you can do. As long as you keep that ratio good with the vinegar, you should be good. Now I'm going to get these into the water bath canner, and I'm going to water bath can them for 20 minutes. And I will bring you back when it's all said and done, and you can look at my pretty jars then. Well, here they are, fresh out of the canner. The last batch is just finished. I'm just about to pull it out, but I wanted to give you an idea of what it looked like. These are wonderful little treats to have in your pantry, to have on the shelf, to give as gifts. I know three of these are already earmarked for gifts for people who I know will enjoy them a lot. So folks, if you've enjoyed this video or you found it useful, please give it a thumbs up. Comment below. That would be fantastic. I love to hear from all of you, and I try to reply to everybody. I know I miss a few of you sometimes, but I try to reply to everybody, and I appreciate you being here and following along. Whether you know it or not, you bring joy to my life. So thank you for that. Recipe in the description box below.